Hey, John, thanks so much for being on the show.
Hey, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, for sure. And to get started, can you give the audience a little bit of context and background in your history in UX?
Sure. I came into UX kind of by surprise. When I went to university, I was studying computer science, and at that time, UX wasn't really a field you could take in school. It was a graduate course actually that a friend of mine told me about. Only available to graduate students. I was an undergrad, but I petitioned because I was interested, and I took this one course where we read like hundreds and hundreds of UX papers of computer human design. So I got a very big view of the field, which was great. And I wanted to work in that. So I got a job as a programmer. And I was trying to introduce these ideas into the company, which is, had never heard of these ideas before. Like, you should pay attention to what users want, or you should do usability testing. And I had some success that way, moving on. So eventually, as my career went along, so I spent about 10 years as a developer full time, and then about 10 years as a designer full time. And then I had a little sideways lunge as an Agile coach because I got really interested in process because I was having a lot of trouble sometimes getting design and developers to work together well. So I got interested in process, became an Agile coach for a while, and eventually ended up being a director of design at Autodesk, where I had a team of like 40, 50, I think it was the biggest it ever was, designers and that reporting to me.
Very nice. Thanks for that background. Yeah, I came across you during a talk I saw you give at UXDX in New York recently. I think what stood out to me was a lot of, I guess, what you learned over your career surrounding developing an effective design culture and a culture of psychological safety. I think that really resonated, and I'd love to learn more about that. How did you get into that? How did you learn how to create an effective culture that actually, motivates the team versus maybe stifles innovation?
Yeah, I think having a bit of a design education really helps there. Like, I've started studying a lot of stuff about classical design and various schools of design. And there's a lot of things in design, these ideas about, that you have to absorb what's around you. You have to really learn how to listen to people before you start to do your work. And that idea of listening really struck home when I was working as like the sole designer in a development team that didn't care about design or that didn't pay attention to all this. And you could just, how do I get a voice in there? How do I get people to hear what I'm doing? So I came about it honestly and just kept trying new things all the time and seeing what works and what doesn't work. But Amy Edmondson's research into psychological safety really like made me go, oh my God, that's it. She's encapsulated it, and she's nailed the kind of the big important points on it.
Yeah, let's dive into that. I think it's super important. What is that? What is psychological safety, and how should managers or maybe independent contributors be bringing those ideas into their team?
Yeah, so psychological safety is a property of a team, not of an individual. That's kind of a key thing. And if you got a psychologically safe team, what that really means is that people on the team feel that, number one, they belong. Number two, it's safe for them to not know stuff. Like, I can ask for help and I won't get ridiculed or I won't get, put down. Thirdly, that I can, that my contribution's welcome. And fourthly, and this is the really safe thing of all, is, are you safe enough? Do you feel that you can tell everyone else in your team that they're doing things wrong? Do you think you can say, you guys are all messed up, we should do it this other way? If you feel safe enough to raise that conversation, you don't think you're going to get ridiculed, you don't think your boss is going to shut down the conversation, then you're in a psychologically safe team. And I should point out that if you don't feel that you can raise questions like that, then you'll never get innovation. If no one feels they can say we're doing it wrong, then how are you ever going to do anything different? So psychological safety is super critical for innovation.
And so let's say your design team has established psychological safety. It's a great open environment. Everyone's transparent and feel like they're growing together. But then they're working with another department maybe that doesn't think the same, or maybe the dev team or the product team isn't aligned with that. How should they approach then collaboration across departments?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. But again, remember, so psychological safety is a property of any given group of people.
Mm-hmm.
There's if you have a team that has a sort of toxic boss, they'll often end up with this, I think, of learned helplessness. You've heard that.
Yeah. Can you explain that to the audience though?
Yeah. So learned helplessness, the original experiments were done on animals, where it's kind of a horrible experiment here to describe. But the animals, you give little shocks, and the animals would jump out of the way, but they couldn't avoid the shocks. They're just made up. So there's nothing you can do. You are going to get shocked. And after a while, the animals give up and they just kind of stand there. And then even when they remove the barriers, so the animals could just leave, they don't. They just sit there and get shocked because they've learned you can't do anything about it. It's like that in a team. If you've learned that your input is worthless, your boss won't listen to your input or they'll shut it down. People just stop giving input and they stop caring. If you got that kind of thing going on, that's a real hard problem to overcome.
Yeah.
And that's something kind of upper management needs to deal with. If it's just a problem of another team as a team kind of being recalcitrant, I think one of the best things to do is to build personal relationships between individuals in the team. If you can get them to work together as pairs, and then they kind of have to start to treat each other as human beings and, listen to each other, because it's a different group again. You just got a group of two people and you can build that trust on one-to-one and then try and leverage that upwards. Doesn't always work, but I think it's probably your best leverage in.
I think exposing or seeing how multiple teams deal with Agile and how they're running product cycles, it seems very different in every company. Is there one right way to do that, as maybe like the Agile manifesto states, or like how do you view that? Because I feel like everyone's doing that differently. Everyone has a different pace on.
Yeah, you can go find Agile coaches online who just freak out about this stuff.
Yeah.
I was a little naive when I started Agile coaching. I had learned one way of doing Agile, right? And I was I developed a way to combine UX and Agile. That was my 15 minutes of fame back 15 years ago, working out dual track Agile, which is a way to combine it really nicely. Agile, ideally, I always think of it as a metric on which you can measure whatever it is you're doing. So you can have totally different processes and they can all be Agile. So really what it comes down to is working small, working iteratively. Are you working small? Are you working iteratively? Are you trying to remove all the stuff that's unnecessary, any bits of process? And mainly, are you continuously improving your process? Do you continuously have this thing where you say, what are we doing? What can we do better? How can we make it more efficient? And that.
Yeah.
And the idea is to get stuff out there. And if you're doing all that, you're Agile. If you're not doing that, I don't know what you're doing. And the other part, of course, is the idea of autonomy in the team, that the team has the ability to make changes. This is the biggest thing I see. In the talk I gave at UXDX, I talk about how you introduce a new process, but that power tends to stay where it was. So you have a company that was working waterfall and you had someone on the top saying, we're going to build this and this and this, and go team do it. And then you install Agile and you still have someone at the top saying, here's a list of features we have to accomplish. Then you're not Agile, because the whole thing of Agile is the people at the top should be saying, here's strategically what we want to do. And then your autonomous team figures out what are the things we need to build to accomplish that strategic goal. And they have like the tight, they can work quickly, agilely, and then have the listen to the market, listen to the signals coming from it, and adjust as they go along. So that's the other big thing about Agile, is that responsiveness and iteration.
What advice do you have for new designers, maybe looking for their first role or early in their career?
Yeah, so I think I had two bits of advice. Number one is flexibility. What I've, in my career, since I'm old, there's so often you find yourself in a non-optimal position, and you might have gone to school where they said, things should work this way.
Mm-hmm.
And you never want to get stuck in a point where you go, well, I can't do stuff because things don't work the way they're supposed to work. You always have to meet people where they are.
Yeah.
Sort of think, okay, maybe there's terrible design process here. They haven't done this or this, but I've got an opening here. Always think, what can I do to take it one step better, one little step better?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of get yourself in there and show your worth. It's not enough that you know the right way to do things. Design is all about communication. You have to communicate and give the developing team or the PMs what it is they need or what it is they think they need.
Yeah.
So flexibility is the main thing I would say. The other thing I would have is to not be afraid to use your research skills, if you've got good research skills, and turn them inward on the people you work with. If you're having trouble working with another human being, I've done this with bosses before, with coworkers, is I start to think about them in the way I would do user research. I try to sort of study them. What are they trying to accomplish? What are their goals? What motivates them? How is their work measured? And often that process separates the emotions for me from it and allows me to work with them in a much better way and come to a deeper understanding and more empathy of them once you kind of pull yourself out of it emotionally and think of it as a research target.
Awesome, John. Well, thanks so much for sharing these insights. I really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Oh, I had a great time. Thank you.